Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars, welcome to the first of what is essentially my festive top 10 lists. Every year I will generally do 3 essential top 10 lists leading up to the new year. One of my favourite films of the year, one of my favourite games of the year, and one of my worst favourite films of the year. And that is this list that we're going to focus on today. Now, because I get sent a lot of screeners, or I will review a lot of fairly low budget films, there's a lot of films here on this list that you would essentially not go to the cinema to see, that you might find like on streaming services or in like bargain bins in supermarkets and DVD stores. So there's varying levels of quality here in regards to this list, because I do watch a lot of low budget films. Now, to get on this list, essentially you've got to score less than 5 out of 10 in my review. So I've got a playlist on my channel of low scoring 2021 films, and all of the films that make it onto that list have scored less than 5 out of 10. So all these on this list are not necessarily listed in order of the score they got when I reviewed them. It's more a case of, in my opinion, the quality and also how much I personally kind of disliked the film. But I do hope you enjoy checking out this list. So coming up first is a series of films that didn't crack the top 10 but deserve a dishonourable mention, I suppose. And the first one we're going to talk about very, very briefly is Thunder Force, the Netflix superhero film that is not very good at all and is dreadfully unfunny. A film called Mommy Dearest that supposedly stars Lou Ferrigno and other names that you may well recognise, but doesn't really, and it's just a really, really terrible low-budget film. Share or Die, another one of those social media type horror films, just avoid it. Jungle Run, followed on the back of the Dwayne Johnson film Jungle Cruise, and it's just a no-budget version of that. Very, very bad indeed. Dwellers, a pretty bare bones, by the numbers, pretty terrible found footage film I didn't enjoy at all. And Beyond Paranormal, and generally speaking I have no idea really how to describe this film other than that it was really pretty garbage, and that you should definitely avoid that one too. Right, coming in at number 10 on the list is a film called Bigfoot the Conspiracy. A very, very low budget film indeed, but sometimes you just can't excuse a film for that, and this is one of those occasions. It's supposedly a film about Bigfoot, but it's not really. It's about some kind of government conspiracy, etc., etc. Terribly low budget and just a terrible film, full stop, to be honest. Right, coming in at number 9 on the list is another Netflix film called Aftermath. A very bang average at best, well, below average for me. It was just a terrible, terrible film in a sense of it's about this young couple that move into this new house that appears to be haunted, but what is actually going on is even less interesting than you can possibly imagine. Really, really poor and definitely not worth your time at all. Coming in at number 8, it's another Brucey film. It's a film called Deadlock. I've reviewed a lot of Bruce Willis films this year. Most of them have been pretty terrible. Some of them have been average at best. This is one of those that falls into the pretty terrible category. It's just a really poor action film with an uncharismatic lead and with Bruce Willis playing the villain, but doing it with literally no joy at all. And it's just a pretty terrible action film. Coming in at number 7. Amityville Cop. Now, any film these days with Amityville in title, you can pretty much guarantee it's going to be garbage, and this one is definitely no exception. About this zombie cop that is taking out, people on the streets, and the police department tasked with taking him down are pretty much the worst police you could imagine. Terrible, terrible film in every single way. Coming in at number 6 is a film called Pipeline. This I reviewed earlier in the year. I don't remember a huge amount about it other than it was low budget and made absolutely no sense, when I had some really poor performances in it. About this beastie that lived in this house that kind of sucked people into the pipes in the building, except the budget was so low it didn't really. It was just, you saw someone's arm in a pipe and then a bit of blood splattered on a wall. It was that type of thing. Just don't watch it, is what I'm really trying to say. Next on the list. Now, this is Apex Predators. And this is by far the worst quality in regards to films I've watched this year in regards to low budget. I mean, it was probably made by spending £5 and maybe, bribing the cast with a packet of crisps or something. Really, really bad about the shark that's terrorising LA, I think, except it's not really, because you never see a shark until right at the end when they put this big cutout version of Jaws on the screen. Honestly, it's so bad, it's hilariously bad. And this is easily the worst film I've seen this year, but you don't, it's one of those films where you watch it but you don't expect it to be good, which is why I've not put it at number one, but it definitely deserves to be at in this list for sure. Coming in at number 4 on the list is COVID-21 Lethal Virus. Again, fairly early in the film I reviewed this, and there have been countless low-budget films this year that have ridden the COVID wave, you could argue. Most of them involve zombies in regards to some kind of pandemic outbreak, and it's like really boring. And this film's no exception. Again, it's just really bad, really low quality, and it's just basically, it's another excuse to make a cheap zombie film riding the wave of COVID. Coming in at number 3, Nest of Vampires. Now, we all like a good vampire film, It's undeniable. They can be really, really good when done right. Fortunately, everything this film that could have done wrong, it did wrong. Number 1, it's very, very low budget. Number 2, there's some really shockingly bad performances. And number 3, it's got really poor portrayal of vampires where they've got oversized teeth shoved in the mouth so they can't speak. The plot is nonsensical. It's just undeniably bad. It really, really is. Coming in at number 2 is another Bruce Willis film. What a surprise. This one I reviewed a few weeks ago now, called Apex. Where basically there's a lot of hunters dropped on an island. Bruce Willis is dropped on an island and he is the hunted. These hunters are after Bruce Willis, some famous criminal, I don't know. And he's supposed to be this badass that can take down all the hunters, except Bruce is about as interested as, well, he's not interested in anything these days, is he? And he's definitely not interested in putting any effort into this film, so they have to be creative here, and the hunters basically turn on each other, and then occasionally you'll see the back of Bruce's head, and it's not really him taking out a few bad guys. It's really bad. There's no getting around it. It's amongst the worst Bruce Willis films I've ever seen, and definitely one of the worst films this year. But coming in at number 1 on my list, and I'd almost buried this one in the back of my head, it was so bad. It's a film called Bulletproof 2. Anybody remember Bulletproof from the 90s with Adam Sandler and Damon Wayans, was it? Pretty decent action comedy, but certainly not one that anyone would put their hands up and say, oh, that was one of Adam Sandler's best by far. Definitely watchable and quite a lot of fun, the Adam Sandler one. This is everything that film wasn't. It's so far removed from the first Bulletproof film. It's not the same actors, and the reason it's not the same actors is they pretend the first film was a movie version of these characters played in this film. It's not funny. The action is abysmal. The performances are so bad, especially when you consider there are many films on this list that have got far lower budgets than this, but with much better performances. The performances in this film are amongst the worst I've ever seen in any film, and it was an absolute chore, and it actually hurt to watch this film. It was so bad, and I couldn't believe anybody watched this film after it had been made and thought, that'll do. This is a worthy sequel to the first Bulletproof. Has to be number 1 on my list. I think I scored it something like 2 out of 10, maybe even 1 out of 10. I can't remember, but it is absolutely shockingly bad and deserving to win top prize of the worst film of the year. So there you go, guys. That is my top 10 worst films of the year for 2021. some pretty abysmal films on that list, and I've seen a lot of what you could regard as poor quality films this year. But pretty much all of these on this list, if you look really hard, there may well be some redeeming features in there for somebody, but I really struggled with many of them. So thanks for watching, everybody. Once again, thank you for your continued support this year, and stay tuned over the Christmas period for lots more content and 2 more top 10 lists. So see you soon.